Graduation day had been circled on my calendar for months. I'd been counting down the weeks like a kid waiting for Christmas. It wasn't just about Matt getting his degree. It was about all of us making it to that moment. Years of late nights, tuition payments, pep talks before exams, and quiet sacrifices behind the scenes had led to this. I thought I'd finally get to enjoy the payoff. I arrived at the campus early, my camera slung around my neck and a program folded neatly in my back pocket. The sun was out, the kind of warm June morning where the air smells faintly of cut grass and coffee from the concession carts. I walked past clusters of proud parents taking pre-ceremony photos, all smiles and arm-linked poses. The ushers were guiding people into the reserved sections, and I spotted the sign, VIP parents only. I made my way toward the front, scanning the rows. That's when I saw Haley, already seated, hair perfectly curled, wearing the pastel dress she'd bought for special occasions. She looked like she belonged in one of those glossy university brochures, the proud mother beaming in the front row. But it wasn't just Haley in that row. Sitting beside her, close enough that their knees almost touched, was Dean. Took me a moment to process it. I'd seen Dean before, more than once, actually. He'd appeared in some of Haley's social media posts over the past year. A charity gala, a friend's dinner in another city, a few random selfies that seemed too casual to be anything formal. I'd asked about him once, and she'd laughed it off, calling him just someone from work, and changing the subject. Now here he was in the parents' VIP section. His suit was sharp, not cheap, and pinned to his lapel was a badge that read special guest in bold, laminated print. He looked comfortable, too comfortable, like he belonged there. And Haley? She was leaning toward him, laughing at something he just said, her hand brushing his arm like it was the most natural thing in the world. I stopped halfway down the aisle, my stomach tightening. There were empty seats beside them, but instead of walking over, I stayed put, pretending to check my camera settings. From where I stood, I could see them clearly, their body language loud in a way I didn't want to interpret. When the ceremony began, I tried to focus on the stage. The speeches rolled on, the dean of the college, the student body president, a keynote speaker I'd never heard of. I clapped when the crowd clapped, smiled when others did, but my eyes kept drifting back to Haley and Dean. He leaned in to whisper something during the boring parts. She laughed again, that easy, unguarded laugh I hadn't heard from her in years. It didn't belong to me anymore. Finally, it was Matt's turn. He crossed the stage with that confident stride I'd always admired, shook hands with the university president, and held his diploma high. I felt the pride swell in my chest despite everything, and I raised my camera, snapping photos as quickly as my hands could work. After the diplomas came the moment of gratitude, where students could thank those who'd helped them reach this milestone. Matt and his sister, Emily, took the stage together, smiling side by side. I expected them to thank Haley and me, maybe toss in a nod to their grandparents. But Matt leaned into the microphone and said, "We just want to thank our real father, Dean, for everything he's done for us. We wouldn't be here without you." It was like someone had driven a nail straight through my ribs. The words echoed in my head, each one heavier than the last. Our real father. My hands froze around the camera. I looked at Haley instinctively, waiting for her to correct him, to laugh it off as some kind of misunderstanding. She didn't. Instead, she turned slightly toward Dean, her smile steady, almost proud. She placed her hand gently on his forearm, like the statement had been rehearsed and approved. Dean gave a modest little shrug, the kind you give when you're pretending you don't like attention but secretly savor it. I stayed seated. My jaw tightened, my pulse thudding in my ears. Around me, parents clapped politely, oblivious to the fact that my world had just tilted on its axis. When the ceremony ended, families surged toward the stage for hugs and photos. I worked my way through the crowd, spotting Matt and Emily posing with Haley and Dean. Dean's arm rested casually around Matt's shoulders. Matt didn't seem to notice, or maybe he didn't care, that I was standing just a few steps away. "Great job up there," I said to him when I finally reached the group. My voice sounded strange to my own ears, tight, controlled. "Thanks," Matt said. but his attention drifted quickly back to Dean. I turned to Haley, my words clipped. What was that about? Calling him their real father? She blinked at me, all wide-eyed innocence. Lucas, you're overreacting. It was just a sweet moment for them. Dean's been supportive. Don't make it into something it's not. Supportive? I repeated. He was in the VIP parents section, Haley. That's not nothing. She gave a little shrug, that dismissive move she'd perfected over the years. You're reading too much into it. This was supposed to be a happy day, and here you are, looking for a fight. I wanted to say more, demand answers, call her out in front of everyone. But I could feel the eyes around us, the cell phones hovering for candid **TS. Instead, I swallowed the words, forcing them back down like bitter medicine. Right? I said, finally stepping back. A happy day. Dean glanced at me briefly, his expression unreadable, before turning back to the kids. Haley didn't look at me again. And that was it. The first crack in the day's facade. It didn't explode into an argument then and there, but it stayed with me, like a splinter under the skin, impossible to ignore. I didn't know it yet, but that moment on the stage, those 4 words from my son, were the first sign that whatever I thought I had with my family was already gone. Driving home from the ceremony, I kept my hands at 10 and 2 like a nervous 16-year-old on his first road test, afraid that if I loosened my grip, everything else would fly apart too. Haley sat beside me, thumbing through photos on her phone. Every so often she'd laugh, soft and private, and angle the screen toward the window like the sun needed a better view. Behind us, Matt and Emily were a duet of bright, casual chatter, what to eat, where to go. Like the words our real father hadn't just ricocheted through the arena and split my chest like kindling. Traffic bled out of the stadium in a slow, patient pour. A kid with a handwritten ice-cold water sign wove between the lanes, freckles sharp under the sun. Matt asked if I'd mind if he texted Dean for dinner ideas. Said Dean knows places. The syllables of that name pinged off the glass and trim like a coin in a dryer. I glanced at Haley. She didn't look up. She just smiled at something on her screen and said, "Great idea." I told myself to be generous. Big day, big feelings. Let it go. Let them glow. I'd make sense of it later, when the house was quiet and my head wasn't a hornet's nest. But later kept arriving early and uninvited. The memories lined up like witnesses. First, the battery-saving excuse when she turned off location sharing. At the beginning, it was a day here and there. Then it was weekends in another city for meetings she couldn't talk about. Then it was just off, and my bringing it up sounded, even to me, like a man trying to catch smoke with both hands. Second, the wardrobe. Dresses that felt heavy in the fingers when I took them from dry cleaner plastic. Fabric with a hush to it. Labels I used to recognize from magazines, not closets. None of them had ever shown up on our cards. Samples, she said. Work perk. I nodded like a bobblehead and changed the subject. Smell came next, the kind of thing you notice at a stoplight if you're honest with yourself. Sometimes she came home wearing bright, peppery citrus that lingered like a dare. Sometimes a darker, resinous floral that hung over the empty half of our bed long after she turned her back and slid into sleep. Not mine. Not gifts from me. Counter sprays at the store. She'd shrug. I'd say, as if I'd been enlightened. Then the photos. Group *TS from award nights, concerts, volunteer days. If I was late, I appeared at the edge, blurry. Dean kept finding the middle. There he was at the spring banquet, seated between my kids like punctuation. His palm resting on Matt's shoulder with that easy, proprietary heat some men carry like a habit. In another, he stood behind Emily, his hand not quite touching her chair. Haley's body angled toward him like plants do toward light. I'd scroll past in public and save my reaction for a locked bathroom stall, forehead against cool tile until the mirror could stand to look at me. Even the mail started throwing elbows. A thick card from the department addressed to the parents. Inside, cursive big as parade floats. Dear Haley and Dean, thank you for all you do. I read it over the sink as if it might explode, feeling stupidly grateful the kids weren't there to see me flinch. I told myself it was admin error. some assistant glancing at Instagram, cross-referencing smiles, filling in blanks that weren't theirs to fill. I folded the card until the crease gave up and tossed it in the trash. It felt like dissolving a photograph in a glass of water. Slow, pointless, final. I tried being direct. More than once. You okay? You seem far away lately. Want to take a weekend? Just us? Haley would sigh like I'd interrupted a dream. Work's heavy, she'd say. My mom's being my mom. The kids need rides. You're hearing ghosts, Lucas. The way she said my name, flat, administrative, made everything inside me feel mislabeled. You're connecting dots that aren't there, she said once, sliding past me in the hallway, her shoulder grazing mine like an apology that didn't stick. Maybe I was. Or maybe the dots had been joined with permanent marker and I was the last one pretending it would wash off. At school one afternoon, I dropped off tuition forms, those boring, crucial pages that keep a future from wobbling. The receptionist, new, with enthusiasm that glittered, handed me flyers for a donor's dinner. We're so grateful to you and Dean, she said, and the way her smile faltered mid-sentence told me she heard it as it left her mouth. I made a sound that could have been a laugh or a cough and walked away before either of us had to live inside the moment any longer. On the drive back that day, I remembered a game Haley and I used to play at red lights. 3 small good things, no repeats. Your coffee hit the spot. The radio played our song. Matt tied his shoes without asking. Somewhere along the way, our lists got privatized. Her good things felt embargoed. Mine shrank to, the dog didn't bark at 3 a.m. The AC still works, the coffee didn't taste like burnt pennies. So I made a ledger. Nothing dramatic, just notes in my phone. 3:14 p.m. Location gray. 11:52 p.m. Blue again. Lyft charge. 2 neighborhoods from the meeting she couldn't name. A restaurant receipt in her purse from the place we'd promised to try together. 2 entrees. A bottle I would have chosen. Dessert with 2 spoons. I told myself I was gathering context, not evidence. Either way, the thread I tugged kept tightening. The night before graduation, I asked if she wanted me to press her dress. She waved me off. Dean sent a driver with a steamer for the gowns, she said. A driver. For a steamer. For gowns that could hang in our bathroom with the shower running hot. I went out to the garage to find the toolbox, and stood there with my palms flat on the workbench until the wood grain steadied. I didn't cry. I didn't shout. I tried to breathe like a person who still understood the math of his own life. I heard myself, in my head, paranoid, jealous, making storms from clouds that might pass if I kept my mouth shut. So I cross-examined myself. Had I been working too much? Yes. Had I traded spontaneity for reliability in a way that looked like neglect from far enough away? Probably. Had I forgotten that love isn't a system you can just maintain like HVAC and tires? Some days, yes. But none of that explained a badge in the parents section, or the way my name kept vanishing from envelopes that were once addressed to us. Halfway home from the ceremony, at a light where the lanes split, Haley finally spoke, still looking out the window. You know, you kind of embarrassed Matt, she said lightly. That face you made when he thanked Dean? People notice. What face? I asked. The one you wear when you're about to argue in a church. He called him his real father, I said, keeping my voice calm enough to pass inspection. Her shoulders rose and fell. Lucas, he's been around. He's helped. They're grateful. That's not an attack. It's acknowledgement. Funny how acknowledgements pick their moments, I said. And their audiences. Silence. Then the steady tick of the blinker, like a metronome for conversations we never finished. In the rear view, Emily replayed a video of the tassel switch. Matt laughed with her. They looked good. They looked fine. They looked like kids who had figured out the quickest route around me. We passed a billboard for the country club hosting the evening reception. Haley snapped a photo of it and typed a caption I couldn't quite see. In the reflection, her face looked weightless, lighter than it had in months. I tried to remember the last time I'd made her look like that and came up empty enough to feel winded. I thought about the first time I tucked Matt in, how he insisted his toy T-Rex guard the door. I thought about Emily's thunderstorm nights, the stuffed rabbit negotiated into the middle like a UN observer. I thought about leaky pipes we battled together at 2 in the morning with towels and jokes, about the budget spreadsheets spread across the table with wine rings like accidental constellations, about how we used to point at the same future from different angles. Then I thought about how quickly a family can be rewritten without anyone bothering to change the title page. By the time we turned into our street, the sun had softened and the heat had loosened its jaw. Haley checked her lipstick in the visor mirror, paused like she might touch my knee, didn't. Inside, the house smelled like lemon cleaner and a stranger's cologne, faint but certain, braided into the day. On the counter sat another card scholarship office, addressed to Haley and Dean. I picked it up, put it down. The kids thundered upstairs to change for the party. Haley read the card, set it beside the fruit bowl, and met my eyes for one beat too long. "You're imagining things," she said, almost tender, like a doctor breaking bad news gently. Maybe I was. But lately, the things I imagined kept arriving by mail, postmarked from my own life. The country club had strung fairy lights along the hedges like someone tried to convince the shadows to behave. Laughter came in glassy bursts from the patio, all ice cubes and congratulations. I parked far enough from the valet stand to avoid the ritual of handing my keys to a kid who would call me sir and see right through me. Inside, music thumped politely through a speaker system that cost more than my first car. I hovered near the bar, where the air smelled like citrus and old wood. A bartender with a bow tie asked if I wanted a champagne toast. I asked for water. When he set it down, I held the glass with both hands, as if I were steadying a small moon. I spotted them before they spotted me. Haley glowed in a dress I had never seen before, silver, simple, the kind of fabric that made light kneel. Dean stood with her at the edge of the dance floor, his jacket off, tie loosened, sleeves pushed just enough to show forearms that looked curated. People drifted past them like friendly weather, offering hugs, claps on the back, little jokes that kept the night afloat. Then the band slid into a slow song, and the center of the room seemed to breathe inward. Dean reached for her hand without looking. She gave it to him like it had been reserved. They stepped together, close enough that her shoulder tucked under his chin, close enough that I could see the tiny smile at the corner of her mouth, the one she wears when a plan is working. Around them, couples found each other and swayed. I didn't move. The water warmed in my grip. The bartender glanced at me once, like he had seen this before and knew the ending, and then looked away to polish a glass with exaggerated care. Across the room, Matt and Emily sat at a round table littered with favors and half-eaten cake. The seats beside them were taken by Dean's friends, or his colleagues, or whatever polite word you use when someone's orbit overtakes your own. Matt leaned in to say something. Dean laughed from the dance floor without breaking step, like the sound was a bridge he walked across. Emily showed him something on her phone, and when Dean finally returned to the table between songs, both kids turned up to him the way. I tried to give myself rules. Count to 60. Finish the water. Take 3 photos and then leave. I raised my phone but couldn't make myself aim. Every angle made me feel like a trespasser in a room where my name used to unlock doors. Someone from the department stopped to congratulate me. I nodded at the appropriate beats, my eyes never leaving the dance floor. "You must be proud," she said. I said that I was. It sounded like I was quoting a stranger. Haley caught my gaze near the end of the second song. For a heartbeat, I thought I saw something like apology. Then she tipped her cheek toward Dean's shoulder and closed her eyes, and whatever I saw evaporated into perfume and bass. When the song ended, they didn't separate. They drifted to the table where my kids sat and threaded themselves into the conversation, a needle pulling through cloth that didn't ask permission. Dean took the seat I would have taken. Haley stood behind him with a hand on his chair, proprietary in a way she had stopped being with me long before I noticed. The bandleader invited graduates to the microphone for toasts. Matt stood, glass in hand, and everyone quieted with that communal hush that says we are about to witness something sweet. He thanked his professors, his sister, his mother. Then he turned to Dean. "You showed up," he said simply, voice thickening. "When it mattered, you showed up. The room sighed, that soft, approving sigh people make when the story makes sense. I looked at my empty hands and found them steady. I didn't want a scene. I wanted a sentence that would carry the weight of the hour without breaking my back. So I walked over. The table noticed me in pieces, Emily first, then Matt, then Haley, whose smile arranged itself like furniture. Dean last, with a pause that made space for dominance. "Congratulations," I said to Matt. "You were great today." My voice stayed even, almost proud. It was true. My son had succeeded. The rest was smoke. "Thanks," he said, polite, distant. The syllables hovered at room temperature. He didn't stand. He didn't make room. He didn't do any of the little things kids do when they remember who taught them to drive. I nodded to Emily. "You too. Big day." "Yeah," she said. And the yeah came wrapped in a smile that belonged to a person who needed nothing from me. I looked at Dean. Up close, the handsomeness that photographs so well looked manufactured, like someone had sanded off the parts that make a real face interesting. "Big night," I said. "For all of us," he answered, pleasant as a doorman. His eyes didn't blink much. Haley reached out as if to touch my sleeve, then let her hand fall to the back of Dean's chair instead. "Lucas," she said, soft, managerial. "Why don't you grab a plate? There's still some salmon." "I'm fine," I said. Then to no one and everyone, "I'll head out soon." "You don't have to," Haley said quickly, a little too brightly. Dean smiled with the kind of warmth people use when they want credit for restraint. "Stay, man. It's a celebration." The word man clattered around the table like dropped cutlery. I almost laughed. I said, "Enjoy it," and turned away before I could be converted into a photo caption. Back at the bar, I set the sweating glass down and watched a new song pull new couples into the light. I felt erased, but the erasure was meticulous, almost kind. No one had shouted. No one had thrown a drink. They had simply rerouted the river and left me on the quiet side, the bank that grass takes back when the water moves. On my way out, I passed the guestbook table. Pen on a chain. A line that read, "Leave a note for the graduate." I wrote, "Congrats. Proud of you, Dad." The way the ink bled into the cardstock made the word Dad look tired, like it had walked here from very far away. At the doors, the night air waited like a decision. I didn't look back. Out in the parking lot, my car recognized me and unlocked with that friendly chirp that felt, suddenly, like loyalty. I sat for a minute, hands on the wheel, forehead against the cool of it, and let the music from the ballroom shrink to a pulse I could place outside my body. There's a point when suspicion is a theory and a point when it becomes an artifact. Tonight, I watched the theory step into the light wearing a silver dress and a loosened tie. It danced. It laughed. It chose where to sit. It taught my children which way to turn their faces. I started the engine, and the headlights rolled out a small road just wide enough for one car. On the passenger seat, my phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. "Great to meet you tonight, D." I stared until the letters blurred, then set the phone face down. The road home was familiar. What waited there wasn't. Back home, the silence sat heavy, like the air after a storm that everyone pretends didn't happen. The kids were upstairs, the hum of a video game bleeding faintly through the ceiling. Haley had retreated to our bedroom without a word, and I was left in the kitchen with nothing but the muted tick of the wall clock for company. I opened my laptop, not for distraction, not to scroll the way I sometimes did to numb my thoughts, but with purpose. My fingers hovered for a moment before I logged into the account I'd kept meticulously for over a decade. The $200,000 college fund I'd built for Matt and Emily. Every bonus check, every overtime shift, every careful decision not to take that trip or buy that new car, it all lived in that account. It was the one thing I thought no betrayal could touch. But the image of Dean's hand resting on my son's shoulder at the reception burned in my mind, sharper than the champagne bubbles in my glass. His laugh at their table, the way both kids leaned toward him, not me. The toast that might as well have been a declaration. "You're not part of the story anymore, Lucas." I clicked transfer funds. The bank's interface was clean and impersonal, almost polite as I moved the cursor to the destination. A new trust in Lauren's name, my goddaughter, my cousin's kid. She'd been over to our house 100 times, always polite, always grateful. The kind of girl who still sent handwritten thank you notes when I covered her soccer camp fees. Setting up the trust had taken me weeks of quiet work, all under the radar. I'd used a different attorney, someone Haley had never met, and made sure the legal language was airtight. The moment the money landed, it would be locked down. Haley couldn't touch it. Neither could the kids. That hurt to admit, locking out my own children. But the truth was, they weren't my children in the way I once thought. Not anymore. The confirmation page loaded, the numbers shifting in a way that felt irreversible. I sat back, the glow of the screen lighting the kitchen in a cold blue wash. It wasn't triumph I felt. More like a clean cut through tangled rope. This wasn't screaming at a party or throwing a glass against a wall. This was measured, permanent. Upstairs, a door shut. Footsteps crossed the hall. A muffled laugh, Emily's voice, floated down, followed by the low rumble of a man's name in my head. Dean. I closed the laptop and slid it back into its case, the action deliberate, like holstering a *P*N after you've already fired. The legal documents sat in a manila folder in my desk. I pulled them out and read over the final clause again. Irrevocable. Beneficiary, Lauren Miller. Trustee, Lucas Carter. The ink was dry, the notary stamp crisp. Everything in order. There'd be fallout, of course. When tuition bills started bouncing, there'd be calls, accusations, maybe even tears. But I'd made peace with that. Support was a two-way street, and I'd spent years driving it alone. I poured myself a glass of water and stood at the window, watching the street lamps cast thin shadows on the sidewalk. The house across the way had their porch light on, a quiet, steady glow. It reminded me of nights when Haley and I used to sit out front after the kids were asleep, talking about their futures like they were a shared dream. Now, that dream belonged to someone else. I finished the water, set the glass in the sink, and turned off the kitchen light. Upstairs, the laughter had stopped. The house felt still, waiting. In the dark, I whispered it to myself, not for anyone else to hear. They made their choice. I made mine. And I went to bed knowing that, for the first time in months, I'd taken something back. The first ripple came quicker than I expected. Matt's university orientation was barely a week away when my phone lit up with 3 missed calls from Haley, then one from an unknown number that turned out to be the school's financial office. I let them all roll to voicemail. By the time I checked my email that evening, the subject lines told the story without me having to open a single one. Urgent, tuition payment declined. Action required, student account past due. Final notice before enrollment cancellation. I leaned back in my chair, the quiet hum of the fridge filling the kitchen. For years, I'd built a system so they'd never have to feel this kind of pressure. Now that safety net was gone, and the weight was right where it belonged, on them. An hour later, my phone buzzed again. This time, I picked up. Lucas, what the hell is going on? Haley's voice was sharp, the kind of sharp that comes from panic dressed up as anger. Hello to you too, I said evenly. Don't play games with me. Matt's school just told me the tuition payment bounced. They said the account's empty. I let the silence stretch just long enough for her to hear it breathing. That's right. What do you mean, that's right? That money is for the kids. It was for the kids, I corrected. Kids who respected me. Kids who saw me as part of their family. Those kids don't seem to live here anymore. You can't just, Lucas, you can't just decide to take that away. They've been planning for this for years. I've been planning for it for years, I said. And I also decided I won't fund a future where I'm erased like I was at graduation. Her inhale was sharp, but she didn't speak right away. When she did, her voice had dropped low, controlled, like she was trying not to show just how rattled she was. This isn't about you. This is about their education. No, I said. This is about choices. And the choices they made have consequences. You all made it very clear who you wanted in my place. You chose Dean. You can ask him to cut the check. She let out a short, bitter laugh. You think this hurts me? You're only hurting them. I almost told her I'd heard those same words from my own father once in another lifetime, and that I'd learned then what they meant. People who play with your worth don't get to keep it. Instead, I just said, "We're done here," and hung up. Within 24 hours, the group text started. First from Emily. "Dad, I don't know why you're doing this, but it's not fair." Then from Matt. "I thought you wanted me to succeed. Guess I was wrong." The word dad from Emily landed like a ghost of a punch. It was there, but without force, without history. From Matt, it wasn't even there. Just my name in his contact list, stripped of meaning. I didn't reply to either of them. That night, I posted something on my personal page, nothing dramatic, just a line I've been turning over in my head for days. I will always support those who value my contribution. Respect is the currency of my care. No names, no context. By morning, there were 30 comments. A handful from people who didn't know the details but wanted to remind me I was better than this. A few more from old friends who wrote things like, "Finally putting yourself first. Proud of you." And then the ones from mutual acquaintances, people who'd been at graduation, who'd seen the dance floor at the reception. "We saw what happened. You don't owe anyone an explanation." That last category was smaller, but it was the one I read twice. The next few days were a steady drip of fallout. Haley stopped calling and started emailing, like maybe the formal tone would get her further. She tried to frame it as a misunderstanding and a moment we should move past for the sake of the kids. I didn't answer those either. Dean, unsurprisingly, stayed silent. I imagined he thought he was being clever by letting Haley handle it, by keeping his name out of the messages. That silence was as loud to me as the music at the country club had been when he spun her under those string lights. One evening, I went for a walk through the neighborhood. The late summer air was heavy, the kind that carried sounds farther than usual. As I passed the open windows of a house 3 doors down, I heard my name in a voice I recognized as one of Haley's friends. The sentence floated out whole. I told her not to let Dean sit there, but she said Lucas wouldn't care. It was almost funny how quickly people's confidence in a lie could turn into public disclaimers when the truth started costing them something. By the end of the week, Haley's sister messaged me directly. "Whatever's going on, you're blowing it out of proportion. They're just kids." I deleted it without responding. But the best, if you could call it that, came from an old coworker I hadn't heard from in years. "Saw your post. Can't believe what she pulled. Dean's been sniffing around her since before the holidays. Thought you should know." I stared at that one for a while, not because it surprised me, but because of how unsurprised I was. The signs had been there. I'd just chosen to file them under things we'll laugh about someday. Now the laughter was gone. The bills from Matt's school kept coming, each one stamped in red, each one forwarded to my inbox by an automated system that didn't care about pride or betrayal. I set a filter so they'd skip my inbox entirely and go straight to a folder I named Archive. I didn't need to watch the clock on their crisis. Some nights, I'd catch myself imagining the moment when they'd have to sit down with Dean and ask him to cover the gap. How would he play it? Would he puff up, act like a hero, or suddenly discover he had limits? Either way, that moment would belong to them, not me. And in a strange way, that thought was the only thing that made me sleep easy. Because for the first time in years, the ledger between what I gave and what I got was finally balanced, zeroed out. They could fill in the rest however they wanted. I was done writing their future in my ink.